The truth about abs. So first off, I don't even know if this is visible at all. I'm messing around with all the lighting and stuff, and it looks like it's done by a 3-year-old, but no, it was done by me. But yes, the truth about abs, and here's my little six-pack guy here. So let's kind of get into it. So first and foremost, kind of what are abs, all right? So it's your abdominal muscles. Generally, we're speaking of the rectus abdominis, which again, if you look at like an anatomy chart, they're gonna be broken up in these kind of little sections. Why are they like that? I honestly don't really know, okay? And everyone's ab formation is a little bit different. That's why if you looked at like a bodybuilding stage or anyone that's really, really lean, they all have kind of different abs. Some people have that kind of quintessential 6, then you'll see some that looks like they have an 8 or 9 pack. Sometimes they're even, these blocks, sometimes they're all over the place. I don't know, that's all genetics. You cannot change the structure of your abs, but I promise you, everyone has them. We all have them, but are they visible or not? That's what we're, after. But it goes with any muscle group. Why do some people have very lean, triceps where they can see this kind of horseshoe, or their quadriceps are all separated? It generally comes down to body fat percentage, for one, but then two, there is kind of genetics. I've seen some people that I'm probably leaner than, but they have a lot more visibility and separation on their quads or wherever muscle groups. So that is going to come down to genetics, which is the second point of why do some people have an easier job getting them and why do some people have a harder job? Again, it's the same exact thing. It's genetics. I'm sure we all knew of that boy or girl kid or whatever that just seemed to have abs when they're 3 years old up until whenever. It's just genetics, which generally is a genetic predisposition of just being a little bit leaner. Again, same thing. I'm sure we know of all the, these individuals in our life that just seem to just always be super duper lean. To those people out there, fuck you, because that's not a majority of us, but genetics are going to be a big component of why or why not you have abs or have an easier or harder time achieving abs. Okay, and then from there, I just kind of side tangent. Abs are not the epitome of health and fitness, okay? Any rock star out there that has abs that's living on the cocaine and cigarette diet, it's not the epitome of health or fitness. And I personally know of and just know of people, through the grapevine that are very, very unhealthy that have a good visible abdominal appearance. So I just want to get that out of there because I get, again, in this perception of what we think is like the epitome of health and fitness and stardom and everything that we want or whatever, I think we envision this person with ripped abs, and that's not always the case. You can have tremendously healthy blood markers and be extremely, extremely fit without having crazy visible abs. The only thing that you need with visible abs is one, again, blessed with good parents, and two, a low body fat percentage. All right, so next point I want to get into is just because they're not the epitome of health and fitness or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should or should not go for them, okay? If you want to put that as your number one goal, I'm not your mommy and daddy. I'm not your parent, okay? And, I come from a coaching standpoint that, and we'll discuss all these goals, but if it's something that you want, let's go for it. Let's try. I mean, that might necessarily mean that we do or do not get there or whatever, but we'll figure things out on the way, and we will still progress towards something. And if I'm being honest with you, yeah, they are cool to have. I generally lean down in the summertime and I like to have some visible abs. One, because of course I'm a coach and trainer, so my body is somewhat of a billboard. And also growing up with insecurities around that little tire and stuff, it makes me feel more comfortable when I take my shirt off and things like that. The reason why I wanted to add this in here is I cannot stand these hypocrite coaches that are like all for, no, you don't need them, they're not worth it, blah, 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 yet they have abs and value it, and then they show it off too, so that it's like, dude, pick a fucking side. Either then don't have the abs and tell people you don't need abs, or don't be the person, you don't need this, and they make their life look glamorous with their abs, but then they tell you don't have them as your goal. I just can't stand that. So anyway, sorry, side tangent there, but if you want to go after abs, go for it, okay? But just wanted to interject with that one right there. All right, so let's talk about ab training for a moment here, okay? Just really quickly, I personally, kind of my bias is I don't think doing a ton of ab training is really gonna give you a huge difference in the visibility of your ab. That is pretty much all going to come down to dropping your body fat percentage. And when I'm thinking about kind of where we wanna invest our time, I do think, again, if the number one goal is getting visible abs, you're better off spending a lot of that time, energy, effort, resources into dietary interventions or things that just get you to move more. So just that increased activity level with, again, the goal of getting into a deficit and dropping body fat. So when it comes to how I like to train abs, I think about this from more of a kind of strength, capacity, and resiliency and tolerance, okay? So I wanna make sure that my core and my spine is super strong and resilient to all these different positions, okay? Whether that's bracing and resisting movement, whether that's bending to the side, rotating, bending over, bending backwards. That's how I attack my ab training, not so much of, all right, I need to get these giant abs, because again, if I'm being honest, I've been doing this for like 17, 18 years, I've not noticed a giant difference in my ab development from the training itself. That all comes down to, again, just dropping body fat. So again, I look at the abs more from a performance and resiliency standpoint, and not just doing loads and loads of reps thinking abs are just gonna magically pop through any type of body fat. Now let's zoom in a little bit more, the specifics of the ab training and kind of the progressions I use to build a nice, strong, stable core, spine, etc. Okay, so generally speaking, I'm gonna start with kind of isometrics. So this is the quintessential, the planks, the side planks, the pow-off press and things like that. So these movements, it's an isometric, so there's no movement, it's just a hold, okay? And generally with this hold, we're resisting some sort of movement to the spine. So if we take a normal elbow plank, that is resisting extension, okay? So we're holding ourselves in this position to where gravity is trying to kind of arch the back, and our core's job is to resist extension, okay? So we have this kind of flexion hold and resisting extension, all right? So that would be an anti-extension exercise. Then we also have anti-rotation. So that would be like a pow-off press. I'm sure you've seen these at the gym where the band's kind of pulling from the side and someone's kind of reaching out and holding. So it's the exact same kind of premise here. We are resisting rotation that is being placed on us, all right? And then the last one is going to be an anti-lateral flexion, okay? So resisting this laterally bending to the spine. So that would be something like a side plank or a suitcase carry, okay? So, and this is generally just an easy way to start. One, it's easier to teach because there's not movement. It's very safe, again, because there's not movement. And it's a good way to just build some kind of base level tolerance and capacity to these movements, and to learn a little bit about what's kind of going on through the hips, pelvis, and core, if there is any pain or discomforts. And again, just building some base level strength. That is going to be phase one of core training. So starting with those isometric holds is a great place to, again, start. But the issues with these, as you kind of progress down your fitness journey, is there just tends to be redundancies with your training, okay? And what I mean by that is a lot of movements that we will do in the gym will already incorporate these isometrics or anti-movements of the core, all right? So if you're doing something like a single arm dumbbell row, that incorporates anti-rotation, obviously, because if you don't, you'll flip right over, okay? Or something like a suitcase carry, or something like a deadlift, single arm press, anti-lateral flexion. So this is why I don't love these after the first couple, weeks or months of training, is I do think we should kind of progress our core training to gain some movement, because there just ends up being a lot of redundancies. And there's not necessarily anything like inherently wrong or risky with redundancies. I just think it could be a little bit more efficient when it comes to progressing your core training and just, again, becoming overall more resilient and stronger and building tolerance and capacity to all these different positions and not just this one neutral position. Now, before we get into kind of phase 2/3, 4, 5, 6 of the ab training, I did just want to touch on this one kind of side tangent here. Now, there is going to be groups of people. There is camps, all right? So when we get into phase 2, which is incorporating movement of the spine, there is going to be some camps that just outright say, don't do that, okay? And I used to belong to this camp. I remember telling clients of like, no, neutral spine, everything neutral. Even if you're picking up a pencil, neutral spine, anti. So resist movement, resist movement, resist movement. And I was part of that for a long time until I realized like that doesn't really make sense, okay? No other muscle we train like that. So for example, do you only do curls with isometric holds? Or do you actually go through that active range of motion? So why is that different from the spine, okay? There's a reason our spine can move in all these different directions. Now, first off, we need this movement just to move. Have you ever seen someone with a spine brace walk? It's really, really awkward. Why is that? Because normally with our gait cycle, we get some rotation, okay? If we're running, we're getting some rotation. If we're throwing, we're getting some rotation, some lateral flexion, some flexion and extension. So I think with proper coaching and programming, we should slowly progress into movement of the spine. But you're gonna take your time with it and load it slowly, slowly, slowly. I think the issue is you see these highlight reels on social media of these guys doing these crazy movements like 1,000,000,000 pounds. Like, that's bad for your back. But you wouldn't say that if you saw a guy squatting 800 pounds. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is with the 800-pound squat, you kind of know that that guy didn't start there, all right? He slowly built up over time, building strength, tolerance, capacity, blah, 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 blah. Same thing with the spine movement, okay? Our bodies are resilient. We are so good at adapting to stress as long as we do it gradually. Graded exposure is key. So if I start my, a client from stage 1, isometrics, to getting some rotation, we're not gonna max this guy out. We might put 5 pounds on a cable stack and then go with a small window of range of motion. Then we check and audit. How'd you feel? How'd your back feel? Your hips feel? Your pelvis feel? Feels good? Ooh, everything feels great. So maybe we'll add a little bit more range of motion, 10 degrees of range of motion, or maybe we'll add 5 more pounds to the stack, something along those lines. Slowly building it over time. So I just wanted to side tangent there. That's, if you do some of these exercises, you might have some people giving you some kickback. Ooh, why are you doing that? It's bad for your back. And you know what? Politely tell them, fuck you, okay? Because they don't know what they're talking about, and you know what's going on here. All right, so now getting into this phase 2, 3, 4, 5, and beyond, and I think you can already kind of know just based off of what I just said here, is that's actually getting in some movement. So after we spend a few weeks of these isometric holds of, again, anti-extension, anti-rotation, anti-lateral flexion, then I want to start going through the actual range of motion. So an anti-extension would be slowly building towards flexion of the spine, okay? So that would be, again, like a quintessential sit-up or something like that. There's a lot of different movements that we can do that just actively flex and go through this movement of the spine. And again, remember, if you're doing this right, you're taking it nice and slow from both a resistance, from a volume, from an intensity standpoint. We're auditing, making sure everything feels good, then we progress, okay? We go through this every single step, okay? Same thing with rotation. We're gonna start nice and slow and light. This could be a super light resistance band. It could be no weight at all, just gravity, okay? Or a light cable stack. We audit, how did that feel? We slowly progress over time. Same thing with that lateral flexion. I don't care if that's a dumbbell side bend or some sort of, like the 45-degree hyper thing, whatever. Slowly, 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 we might just start with a very small range of motion, audit, how did everything feel? Then let's add in a little bit more range of motion. How did that feel? Let's add in a little bit more range of motion. How did that feel? Then we slowly progress with weight, okay? So why I said that's kind of phase 2 and beyond is because you can kind of take that however you want, you know what I mean? So once we start moving the spine, from there, again, you'll find other ways to challenge, whether we're increasing reps or volume, whether we're increasing the resistance that we're using on this, but we're just gonna slowly kind of keep building that and building that and building that. And yes, if you're doing this right and you're doing those audits and being honest with how everything's feeling, I do think that overall, you will just be a more capable, a sturdier, and just have generally just more tolerance to all these different ranges. Which, what does that mean to me? What is the carryover I'm looking for is less injuries, less visits to the doctor for back pain and things like that. Not throwing your back out because you picked up a fucking textbook like this, okay? Because we've already built a lot of tolerance and strength to those positions. So that's kind of my philosophy when it comes to ab training. Next one, I'm just gonna tell you kind of practical takeaways and how I personally like to program my ab training. All right, so how do I personally like to program my ab training? Okay, so for right now, I have 2 lower body workouts. So lower body, and I like to include core. Now this is just for me, I do it twice a week. If you wanna do it more, you can. But again, go back to kind of the start of the video when I was saying, if the goal is abs, I do think a better investment, if you're really looking for visible abs, is to nail some cardio, work on dietary interventions and things like that. So that's why 2, maybe 3 days, but I don't think you need 19 days a week of abs. In my opinion, again, I don't think that is going to be the best investment in your time and resources. All right, so let's get into it. Enough of these tangents. 2 lower body days with core. How do I split it up? Okay, well, I basically rotate through all those different movements. So one day is going to be a flexion-based movement, all right? Once I have surpassed a lot of those isometrics, I don't do too many isometrics because again, I get it in a lot of my other exercises, all right? So flexion-based movements, and I choose from 2 of these, all right? So I'll do 4 weeks where the flexion is coming more from this upper back, okay? So that could be, again, it could be a crunch, it could be a frickin' crunch machine, but anything that the movement is initiated by the upper back, okay? So I'll spend 4 to 6 weeks there and then I'll switch it up. I do that with every one of my training blocks. 4 to 6 week, choose some new stuff. 4 to 6 week, choose some new stuff, okay? So flexion, upper back, or I'll do something where it's initiated with the pelvis. So this could be right now, what I'm doing is that kind of Roman chair. I'm coming up and kind of rotating my pelvis. This could be lying on the floor, a little reverse crunch, but those are the 2 versions of flexion that I like to hit through a different training block, all right? And then same thing, again, my next one will either be a rotation or a lateral flexion. And whatever one I didn't get to, I'll get to the next training block. So again, lower body A might be a flexion base, lower body B might be some sort of side bend, okay? And then with the next training block, I will just hit the ones that I didn't hit, okay? And that is, for me, the easiest way to keep it super simple, okay? So, A, flexion, upper back. B, lateral flexion. Do that for 4 weeks. Then we'll switch the next 4 weeks. A, flexion with the reverse crunch. And then B will be a rotation exercise. If you just keep rotating through that, then you're going to have a pretty dang complete core training routine. And I do think you'll have a lot of tolerance and capacity to all these different positions. And I truly feel that your back will just overall feel better as well. But again, take it slow. Be smart about it. Understand the setup, the execution of all these different exercises, and yeah, just slowly build it over time, all right? So there you go. I'm gonna stop here. I know this was a long video. Please let me know what you think, and if any of you have questions or if you want an example of core training, ab training exercises, just let me know. I don't mind putting together kind of a free resource of that. And just a quick apology because, you know, I hate being the bearer of bad news with the ab training, but yes, it does come generally down to just lowering body fat. And then I would kind of compartmentalize or reframe your ab training to just being like, I want a strong, healthy fucking back, all right? That is my bias. If any of you are interested in coaching or learning more, I have all the details in the description below. Other than that, like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for tuning in.